Hello children! Today we're out here exploring this beautiful marsh habitat here in South Florida at nighttime in search for as many different herps as we could find, or reptiles and amphibians. This habitat out here is perfect for both frogs and aquatic snake species. So let's see what all we could find out here. Alright, well, not a snake. This right here certainly is a really cool native herp that you could find out here in the marsh habitats of South Florida. This is a southern toad, one of our coolest native amphibian species here in South Florida. Now, at first glance, this might look very similar to the invasive cane toads, but their patterning is a bit more modeled, and more importantly, there's these two crests on the top of the head right in between the two eyes that kind of stick up on the southern toad that would be lacking in the cane toad. On the other hand, the cane toad, instead of having those two crests, would have this kind of thin ridge running on top of the eye and then around the bottom of the eye. This kind of sharp ridge along the face is why members of the same genus as the cane toad are often referred to as beaked toads. But these right here are the true North American toads. So native species like this southern toad, the Fowler's toad, and the American toad. I'm actually gonna pick this one up very gently because amphibians are quite sensitive animals and I'm not gonna handle it for too long. But this is actually quite a large southern toad. Most southern toads I've seen are quite a bit smaller than this, and this is one of the largest ones I've ever seen of this species. As you can see, these southern toads have a really big head, almost a disproportionately big head, and tiny little legs. So unlike their more aquatic frog cousins, these land-dwelling toads can't jump nearly as far as like a pig frog or a leopard frog can. Don't get me wrong though, these southern toads are not any less voracious. Toads will eat basically anything they could fit in their mouth, though these southern toads mostly focus on eating invertebrates. They'll probably actually be out here eating beetles, like this little southern masked chafer right here. No, I'm not gonna feed it. What did you think I was gonna do? Southern toads, while all individuals basically have that same kind of modeling pattern on their back with these little bumps in the middle, there's actually quite a variety in coloration. And I've seen southern toads range from more of a reddish brown color to more of a tan color to more of a grayish color. And this one actually has some greenish tones to it, which is not really anything I've ever seen in a southern toad before. All right, so I don't want to stress out this southern toad too much, especially since their skin, being an amphibian, is so much more sensitive than that of a reptile. So I'm gonna let it go and get back to eating some insects out here in this beautiful marsh environment in South Florida. Let's see what else we can find.
After a lot more walking, finding this really cool southern two-stripe walking stick, and a killdeer out of all things, our chances of finding a snake were looking smaller and smaller until...
All right, children, this is what we have right down here is a pretty small brown water snake, Rhodia taxospilota. This is an aquatic snake species, which makes sense with this marsh habitat we have right here. But this species does get quite a lot bigger than this. I've seen some brown water snakes get to about 4 feet long, so this is a very young one, as it is less than a foot long, I'd say. But even though it's quite small, I could still tell for sure that this is a brown water snake, because this species has a super distinctive pattern, being overall kind of chocolate brown color with darker brown rectangles running in kind of a checkerboard pattern along all of their body. In the bottom part, their ventral scales are also checkered, but in a different way. You can see the pattern on the ventral scales is kind of this mostly white with these little black speckles. And Rhodia, which is the Latin name for the genus that contains the water snakes, have a very distinctive face shape. A very rounded face with big eyes, with rounded pupils, and very distinctive lines between the labial scales, which are those scales that border the top and bottom of the mouth of these snakes. Because these are aquatic snakes in these marsh environments that are brown in coloration and mottled in pattern, you might be inclined to confuse this with the venomous cottonmouth. But that more blocky patterning, as well as the rounded head and those big eyes, sets this apart, in my opinion, quite easily from a cottonmouth. Though, one difference that might be a little difficult is a lot of times you'll hear people saying that vipers have a distinctive triangular head shape, whereas water snakes will have a rounded head. But Rhodia, like this brown water snake right here, can actually puff out the back of their head to make it look like their head is triangular. And as you can see, this one's actually kind of doing it right now. And so I could see how you could mistake this for potentially having venom glands, but No need to worry about these. These are completely harmless. While water snakes don't have venom, what they do have is actually an anticoagulant in their saliva. So if one of these were to bite you, you're going to bleed a lot more than you would otherwise from just a random scratch or a cut. While it isn't venom, that does work to help facilitate these water snakes eating their prey. Water snakes mostly eat fish, but will also take down amphibians and other things like small aquatic invertebrates. Anything that they could find out in these marshy areas, near the edge of the water, or even in the water, as these water snakes are pretty good swimmers and can even swim underneath the surface of the water. But that anticoagulant really helps them digest their prey faster. And even though it is not a venom, it's still something you have to be a little bit careful about while handling these, as if you do encounter quite an unusually bitey one, you're gonna bleed out a lot. Though it's completely harmless, and once you clean it off, you'll realize that there's just barely a few cuts and scratches, nothing much. This one is very docile and being really good for the presentation, so I'm gonna let it go right back where I found it. I've seen some brown water snakes get like so much longer, like a lot longer. How many feet?
If you enjoyed this video, then make sure to check out this video right here, where we find giant wolf spiders at nighttime. Enjoy!